Welcome to another episode of the Reason to Be Hot podcast with just me, Tolly Talks. Arnold nicely covered me last week, so I am nicely covering him this week. And do you know what? I think it's probably only right that that happens for this week. And what we're going to be talking about today is shifts. So for those of you that don't know, I left my career at Sky last year. Pretty much a year ago, actually, July 30th, I left Sky last year. And I've had a beautiful year of volunteering, of building business, of consulting, doing lots of different things. And that came to an end this Monday. So for those of you who want to date, this is the 9th of August, and Monday was the 5th of August. And this week, I actually made a bit of a shift in my career. So I just thought that, as it's just me, I'm going to use this as a bit of a journal and talk a little bit about my first week in this new, not just job, but also new career. And I feel like at the moment, lots of people are shifting. There's lots of change happening in this world that we live in. If you've seen anything in the news in the UK over the last week, things are mad. Things are actually mad, probably for the last 2 weeks. And, things have been pretty crazy since COVID. There's been lots of layoffs. There's been lots of cost increases, cost of living. Lots of things are changing. So many people are actually making shifts at the moment. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the shift that I've been going through at the moment, what I've been doing to navigate the shift. I'm not saying that I've got it right, but just some of the things that I've been thinking about, some of the things that I've been doing, and just some things for you guys to think about as you go through shifts. Because look, one of the only constant things in this life is that change is going to be always happening. No one is the same as they were yesterday or the day before. Like, things are always changing, So there's this saying, you never step into the same river twice, right? Even though you might jump into the Thames, but the water's always moving, things are always changing. Change is a constant in life. And we really need to be able to roll with the punches and enjoy change, to be honest. I know that sounds crazy, but I think that one of the things that helped me so much in my life is that at university, one of the courses on my degree was change management. So it was really about understanding the theoretical principles and how to impact change on an organization. But those same principles are applicable to us. So it's really important that we're able to not just adapt and not just endure change, but actually enjoy change. And I think that one of the things that people find quite scary about change is the unknown. But I went to a church service once, and this also was a game changer for me. And they said, God is in the unknown. God is there in the mystery and in the unknown. So what do I have to fear with change? Things are going to be different. Yes, they are. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. For us to grow, things need to change. And what we don't understand is that nothing actually stays the same. Things are either getting better or they're getting worse. Change is going to happen anyway, but we need to embrace it. We need to enjoy it. We need to say, okay, I'm here for that change. I'm here for that growth. And I think we need to see change as growth rather than change as death, because those are kind of the two opposite things, right? Is growth or death. And often we think of change as death. If we're really being honest, we think this is going to change. It's going to be bad. And that's the death side. But if we really embrace it and enjoy it, change is good for us. Change is good for us. So a little bit about my transition. So in my last role, I was a data person, right? I was a data leader. And now what I'm moving into is actually more of a commercial sales type role. Those two things are very different. Very, very different. Very different. But for me, even before I left Sky, I'd had inklings that this was the change and this was the shift that was necessary. And this was the change and the shift that was going to happen to me. When I look back over my career, I think about how God has prepared me for this change and for this shift. And I think this is something really important for us to think about and know as Christians, is that God wastes nothing. God he's such a master at creating, curating, putting together our lives. When I first started working at Sky, after my grad scheme, my first 8 years was spent working with sales teams and going out to help them sell. I wasn't a salesperson. I was a data person that was there as part of the sales process. But even when I think back to that, that was a God thing. That's part of what God has placed in my path to give me those experiences to be ready for this moment. In my last 2 years at Sky, I spent a lot of time talking to salespeople and understanding what as a data person, that's not how I want to be sold to, or this worked really well when this person sold to me this way. So I just love how God has put those things across my path to prepare me for this shift. And for me, I know that this is a great thing because the skills that I'm going to get in this environment are going to help not just me, but they're going to help Christian organizations that I work with as well, because I'm learning some of the things that need to be done to help an organization make money. That's so important. And I'm just so grateful because the company that I'm working for have some of the best salespeople. Like, they are so good at sales. It's amazing. And God has placed me in that environment. And even how I got there was a God thing, because this has been in the workings for over a decade now without me even knowing. You know, God brings those connections, brings all the right things in the right place at the right time. And often we don't even know it's happening. So if you're someone that's going through a shift right now, what I want you to do is I want you to take a few moments and look back over your life and think about and try and understand, where are some of the threads that God has been pulling in all this time into this shift that's happened now? Because God isn't someone who just puts us in places unprepared. He's absolutely been helping us and growing us and showing us the right things if we heed the lessons along the way. And that's a really important thing, because often when things are happening to us, sometimes we are like the Israelites in the desert. We are moaning, we are grumbling, we are complaining. When you look at the Israelites in the desert, there were two ways that they could have gone through. They could have gone through one way or another way. And God chose to bring them this way because they weren't ready for the other way. But what should have happened is that along the journey, they should have been learning the things that they needed to learn to then get to the promised land and execute what they needed to execute. But they grumbled, they complained, they moaned, and instead they died in the desert. They didn't actually learn the lessons that they needed to take the promised land properly. So what we need to realize is that God is always planning these things. Things that are happening to us in our lives are often going to be used by God to help us to get to where we need to get to. What I'm not saying is this: when wicked things happen to us, that is not because God has said this needs to happen so that they can learn this lesson. No. What I'm saying is this: sometimes the wicked things that happen to us in our lives, God will turn those around and use them for our good for later down the line, right? Because it talks about how he has plans for our good. Yeah, a plan and a purpose for good and not for evil. So when those things are happening, the people of Israel going through the desert wasn't evil. It wasn't wicked. They had to translate from one place to another, and they had paths that they could go down, and God took them down the right path that would have been good for them, but they didn't respond in the right way. Yeah. So it's really important that as we're going through life, if things are happening that we don't really understand, we can ask God, hey, what's the lesson that I need to learn in this scenario? What is it that I need to be passing in this scenario? What is it I need to be understanding? What is it that I need to be doing that's going to help me for my future? How should I approach this situation? Moaning, grumbling, and complaining is not it. It doesn't empower us. It doesn't make us better for the future. If we allow the things that are happening to us to help us to grow, we'll be better for our future. So if you're going through a shift, I want you to think back over your experiences through life and ask God to show you the threads that have been pulled in together that make you more prepared for this shift than you probably realize, because God always has a plan. And if we're in his will, everything, the provision would have been laid out for us beforehand for when we get to this place. So that's one thing. If you're going through a shift, look back over your life and try and understand, what are the things that God has already laid out for me to be ready for this. The next thing is embrace the shift with open arms. Go into it open-minded for what God wants you to learn, for what God wants you to see, for who God wants you to become in this shift. Because God has plans for us that are strength to strength, glory to glory. And sometimes, so for example, I'm taking a step back in terms of my job title, in terms of my salary, right? In terms of the power and the influence that I have in an organization. I've taken a step back because I'm moving from something that I'm super competent in to something that I'm learning about. And it's really, really important that sometimes you have to be willing to do that. But I know that it's a temporary step back to take big leaps forward, in the future. And it's really important. And this kind of speaks to humility. Like sometimes you have, well, not sometimes, you need to humble yourselves in these situations. So I've gone into it and I've had the conversation with myself that says, you're not going to be on the leadership team. You're not going to have the nice title. You're not going to have this. You're not going to have this. Your pay might not even be the same, but this is going to be good for me. I'm going to go into it open to that. I'm going to go into it not bitter about that. I'm going to go into it ready to learn and to grow and to do the things that are necessary. And it says, humble yourself and he will exalt you. It paraphrased. So it's really important that we be willing to humble ourselves. It doesn't say that God is going to humble us. It doesn't say that circumstances have to humble us. You can go through terrible circumstances and still not be humble. That's not how it works. You have to humble yourself. And humility is massive. So I'm going into an environment where I don't know as much as most people. So humility means that I'm going to need to ask questions that might seem stupid. I'm going to need to ask basic questions. Even though I'm super accomplished in my career, I still need to ask questions like someone who is brand new in their career. And some of the people that I'm working with, some of them are like 19 years old, actually at the beginning of their career, and we're in the same environment learning some of the same things. So it's going to take humility on my part, and not just once, not just deciding once that I'm going to approach with humility, but every day, every single day, it's going to take humility, understanding where I'm currently at and where I need to get to, and approaching that in the right way. It's really, really important, really, really important. So like I said, this week has been my first week, and I've really enjoyed learning, really, really enjoyed learning. And I think that something that as we get older, we need to be really mindful of is that you need to be putting things in your life for you to learn. So last week we were in Bournemouth and I learned to paddleboard, and it was like, I'm not good at it. I'm not a water sports person, as you can probably imagine. But we went with some family friends, and there was the dad there and the son there. The son's like 21 years old, and he was teaching me how to paddleboard. Yeah. And I know that the Nigerian in me was like, you're not my age mate. But I had to silence the Nigerian in me, because now we're in the water. He knows exactly what to do and I don't. You best believe I had my life jacket on. You best believe I made it as safe as possible for myself. We went to a really shallow place, but there was something so amazing about learning something new. And I'm 35, I'm not old, but I'm not super young. Yeah. But what I realized in that moment, and what I felt like God was speaking to me about, was that, like, as we get older, we need to make sure that we're still trying to learn new things. Because even if we think about our faith walk, where it talks about like a child, there is something like, children are so curious and so open to learn. They love learning. But as we get older, we feel like, well, I know this and I know that. So we kind of let go of that love of learning. And we need to be really careful that we don't do that, because that's also where pride sets in. I need to be willing to put myself in situations where I don't know everything, where I need other people to help me to learn, or where I need to go back to basics and learn something from scratch and build myself up in that thing. It's really, really important that as we get older, whether it's physically or whether it's in terms of our faith or in terms of our experiences, that we stay really, really open and hungry to learn new things. And we apply ourselves to learning new things. It does something to your brain and to your body to put yourself in that situation, to learn new things and to grow in those things. It's really, really important. And that was the same for me this week. There were so many things that I was learning about how to talk to clients, how to talk to potential customers, how to open conversations, how to further conversations. I learned so much. And I'm someone who, I have a lot of conversations because I podcast, but that didn't actually mean that I knew everything that I needed to know. And if I approach it like, well, I do lots of interviews and stuff like that, so of course I know how to do it, that would be a terrible thing for me. That pride would absolutely stop me from learning the things that I need to learn. But my deliberate approach is, okay, teach me like I don't know anything. Sometimes people are like, well, you've been working for 12 years. And I said, look, teach me like I don't know anything. I could have actually skipped this week when I was talking to my manager. I could have actually skipped this week because this is an organization I've been working with for a year. So in theory, I should know all the things. But I said to him, hey, I would love to know what all the new people are learning like I don't know anything. And for me, that was actually the best thing for me to do this week, was just to learn it like I didn't know anything. So it's really, really important that we are open. that we're really, really open. I'm not saying I'm the most humble person in the world. Not like Moses, who wrote that thing in the Old Testament, who said, and Moses was the most humble man on earth. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm not saying you should try and be like me. What I'm trying to say is that I'm deliberately trying to be open and put myself in humble positions so that I can get the most out of this scenario. That's what I'm trying to say. And that's what I'm trying to challenge you and ask you about is, can you be more open in different scenarios? There are going to be situations in your life right now that you're going through where you know you could be more open. And maybe it's something that you know, but you don't want to admit. What I'm here to tell you is that there is so much gold and so much goodness when you can be open, when you can be humble, and when you can be curious. There is so much in there. And one thing that we need to realize is that this world that we are living in is changing so much and so fast. You might have seen what's happening with artificial intelligence. To be honest, artificial intelligence has taken a bit of a backseat at the moment to political and civil unrest that's happening in all over the world. But AI is advancing at rates that we have not seen before. It's exponential. And it's gone from, well, the AI drawing has 6 fingers and this and that, to now like it's looking really, really good. So that rate of change is going to absolutely impact and shift our jobs. It's absolutely going to impact and shift how we do our jobs. There are going to be scarily lots of jobs that are going to be lost. But the people that are going to be okay are the people that are going to be able to adapt and shift into new things. So even if what you learn about is learning about artificial intelligence, a quick tip is that the people that are going to do well with artificial intelligence are the people that can do prompts, which is they can give the instructions to the artificial intelligence to get the best results. There is still space for us right now in this world, even with artificial intelligence. Don't know what it's going to be like down the line because they're already working on artificial intelligence talking to each other and trying to figure stuff out that way. But it's like, if we can adapt and we can learn and we can grow and we can roll with the punches, we will still be very primarily placed for those environments. Something we need to remember is that God does not want us to be irrelevant and obsolete, especially as Christians. One of the things that we need to realize is that even where that God chose the nation of Israel and he positioned them in such a place that the nations of the world would pass through Israel, see how his people are living, and want to understand and know their God. Is that what's being seen in our lives? Are we living our lives in such a way that people see that and want to know our God? And often that part of that is being excellent. Part of that is being able to compete in this world in terms of brilliance. When we look at Daniel was 10 times more brilliant than the other wise men in the land. And it's like, there is no reason that we can't have that same thing. But it takes willingness to adapt, willingness to shift. Let's think about Daniel. There was a massive shift in Daniel's life that on the surface of it wasn't actually for his good. He was taken into captivity from his homeland into a foreign land with foreign gods and idols, but God still turned that around into something amazing for him because Daniel was willing to adapt and change. He wasn't willing to compromise, but he was willing to adapt and change and to grow. He applied himself to the learning that he was doing. He still wanted to make sure that he was honoring his God with what he was eating and how he was praying and who he was worshiping. But you could see that Daniel was doing the things that needed to be done in that land to be successful. And we need to be willing and able to adapt and to shift, but not having to compromise. And that is something that's really, really important, is the not compromising part. So, like I said, I'm going through quite a big shift at this point in my life. I'm excited for it. I think there's always going to be the part of you that goes, okay, what if I can't do it? What if I'm not good at it? That part is pretty much always going to try and come, but you have to trust God and you have to know that, okay, this is actually what God wants me to be doing. Before I took this role, I prayed about it. I've asked God, okay, I'm open. What is it you want me to be doing? And I felt like this was the right thing for me. So if this is where God wants me to be, okay, then God, I already know you've made provision for me. I already know the favor is there for me. I already know that you will help me to be wise in how I do this. So what do I have to fear? So yes, that voice is going to be there, but I trust God that this is where he wants me to be. This is going to end really, really well. this is going to go really, really well. God has things for me there. There is a way that this is going to glorify God by me being in this place. I've had conversations with different people about what that looks like. And that's a theme that keeps coming back is, okay, how do I glorify God with it? And that's really what I want to do. Part of that is being excellent at what I do. Part of that is being respected where I am and being able to speak into other people's lives because of that respect, because I am excellent. So let's be open to what God is doing. Let's trust him and let's be humble. Let's approach these things with humility. Let's be humble when we're approaching these things. Let's be open. Let's ask questions. Even if it's going to make us look stupid, let's be open and let's be humble. So I would love you to think about the shifts that are going on in your life right now and how can you be more open, more humble, and trust God more in those shifts? How can you go into them to enjoy the change that's happening, not just endure the change? Catch you on the next episode. Peace.